This is Empire Sports Alliance, unfiltered. No fluff, no filters, just the real side of sports. We're talking athletes, coaches, agents, doctors, executives, the people behind the scenes who actually move the needle. From building careers to surviving the grind to winning off the field. This is where real conversations collide.
All right, welcome everyone to another episode of Empire Sports Alliance Unfiltered. I'm one of your hosts. I'm Ronnie, wealth guy. Got my background in hockey. Grew up in cold weather, etc. But been working with athletes here over the last 20 years in terms of like their success on and off the field. Joined by my co-host Eric and our guest RJ.
Hey everyone, I'm Eric. I've been a sports chiropractor, physiotherapist for the last 26 years. Been honored to work with organizations such as the Dodgers, Mets, Giants, been in the Olympics and a few concert tours as well. And now I'm in Scottsdale doing private concierge, helping people out. By my background, that's actually how I met our guest, RJ. So I'm excited to have RJ joining us. RJ was the strength and conditioning coach with the Washington Nationals for 12 years. But he's done extended training on performance, body mechanics, movement specialties, as well as nutrition and a few other things. So, RJ, I'm happy to have you here.
Thank you. Good to be here. Well, maybe let's start there since we're in Scottsdale, right? Well, obviously spring training just started, etc. So, probably first question in terms of like a young player, again, maybe the first time ever going into spring training, what needs to be on their mind? What is it that, how they should show up? How should they be prepared physically, mentally and stuff? What does it, take for somebody like that?
A couple of big things is obviously first spring training, over prepare, with everything, you're physically, mentally. One big thing that I see in spring training a lot, the first, second year, guys have a lot of issues with hamstrings, lower back. They're not used to being on their feet 7 days a week, right, 4, 6, 8 hours a day for 6, 7 weeks. So the big thing is with being on your feet nonstop, that's one of the biggest things that high school, college guys just don't realize, and it starts beating them up second, third week. So what I tell people is get on feet, work a month and a half, 2 months for spring training, get on your spikes, wear them outdoors, just get used to being on your feet for more than 30 minutes, an hour a day. The second thing with that is, as crazy as it sounds, and this goes in the recovery, which I'm sure we'll talk about later, is adjusting the sleep schedule. Spring training, you're starting to wake up at the first week that you're getting up at 6 in the morning, 5:30 in the morning, depending where you're living. And if you're out in California, you're used to waking up at noon, well, that's 12 o'clock out in Florida. So that's a huge difference. So you have to start working your schedule in so that your first week or two, you're actually able to recover, perform better, and do things you need to do.
So, okay. I know from a injury standpoint, clubs treat all differently. From a training standpoint, is that similar with different clubs? One club's known or organization and train this way, and another one's going to do it a different way.
As in performance-wise?
Performance-wise, so for example, I have a Rockies player, and I saw him a couple days ago. The first game's in 3 days. And he's like, I gotta be honest. I mean, I've been doing some sprint work, but not a ton. And the team has not done any sprint work whatsoever. Our first game's in 3 days. So they're not working with him to get him ready ahead of time. He's going to go in a game. He has to jump for a ball, dive for a ball. He needs to round a base and push it. To me, that's where an injury is going to come in way too fast.
So spring trainings, I've had a luck to work with through the Arizona Fall League, I worked with, all 30 teams. So I had pretty good contacts talking to all 30 teams, what they do on different things, whether it's performance-wise, athletic training-wise, rehab-wise. And spring training has changed a lot over the years. It used to be 20, 30 years ago, you came to spring training to get yourself in shape. Now you're expected to be in shape. So with a lot of these all-season performance camps, all-season training, they're expecting these athletes to show up day one to have the full spring repertoire. And now that being said, you have to know that if you even get 50% of your athletes doing off-season what they need to do, you're in a plus. So my thought has always been you have to train to the top, but you have to look at the pool of people from the bottom up. So you have to understand that you're going to have a good majority of people who haven't trained, right? You get that through what kind of relationship do you have with the players? Are you seeing the players as people and athletes, or are you seeing them as data points and asset values? A lot of teams are seeing people as data points and asset values, so they're not worried about that. They're seeing them as expendable or replaceable.
Analytics has taken so much over.
And analytics can be phenomenal because you can use that to look at running progressions. You can look at drop down, see sprint endurance, see how they looked compared to last year. But without that relation with an athlete, you need the athlete to be honest with you. Hey, I hadn't done the sprint work. Hey, my hamstrings are a little tight. That can go a long way into that feedback and it changing your daily routine.
Well, and the mental side. What if they broke up with their girlfriend or got in a fight with their best friend? Like, analytics doesn't take the human side of things into consideration also.
So you talk about key things, sorry to interrupt, but the key thing is really to build that relationship with the athlete itself.
Right. Yeah, that is the biggest thing. If you worry about if that person first, and then the athlete, everything else is going to come in and everything else is going to work. That everything else is a tool. Analytics is a strong tool. Sports science is a strong tool. Nutrition, all that stuff. But until you have that relationship and really care about that player, that athlete, nothing else really matters.
So it's all communication. If any relationship's going to work, you got to communicate, basically.
Well, you kind of brought up the point in terms of, again, those drills with your particular client, right? But in terms of, maybe that's a question for both of you, but, I look at it, from a financial strategy as well, right? In terms of preventing injury. So you have a, longer lasting career in terms of, and again, the way you can perform, obviously that's going to have an impact on you and your legacy in terms of like your family as well, right? So I think just from that perspective alone, I think working with guys like yourselves, right? I think is really important from an athlete's perspective. Have you seen examples in terms of people actually losing out on money at the end of the day because, again, they were injured? I think we all have, but they were injured too often or, just didn't take care of themselves the right way.
That is happening a lot more because, a couple of years ago when they had contraction, they cut down 42 minor league teams, which took out about 1,800 jobs. The potential lockout coming up, they're talking about getting rid of another level of minor leagues, which would be 900 plus minor league jobs. So now there is a lot more supply of people. There's always been a high supply. There's more greater supply of people than the demand for athletes. So it's on the team side and with that, so you're going to start seeing more and more that your shelf life used to be higher draft like 5 years. And it's coming down to 3 years, sometimes 2 years. That if you don't perform right away, especially if you're mid-low draft pick, they got someone to replace you really quick from the next draft, from independent ball, somewhere along those lines. So
it's a particular drop off, you could, from a round perspective in terms of mid-draft. So if you're in the 15th, 16th round, or you have a cost block, again, does that in a period of time, does that shrink dramatically all of a sudden from one round to the next?
Yes, the combination of the round and your signing bonus. So you could be a 4th round pick that's slotted at a couple $100,000, but you're like a cheap sign. So they sign you for $10,000. They use that slot money to oversign the 1st round pick. So if you're a 1st round pick, 2nd round pick, you're going to have more leeway. But as you start going down, 3rd, 4th, you start losing it. And then, once you get lower side notices, they see you as replaceable. And I've seen talking to organizations out there. And again, what I'm going to talk about today is from a perspective of 30 organizations.
Yeah.
And I still keep contact with people from close to 30 organizations all throughout spring training, buddies who coach big leagues, minor leagues, front office. And a lot of times their perspective is, hey, you got 5 guys in the minor leagues who are going to be in the big leagues. And that's what we care about. And that's where the idea comes from. And it even gets so big. I was at a hitting conference this past December, hitting biomechanics conference, and a coach from another organization told me that he got in trouble from, they went on a 6-week where they were losing some games in the minors, and their front office told the staff he lost his $10 million in valuation. It wasn't about the players struggling. Hey, players, hey, you lost us $10 million in valuation.
I mean, we really got to keep that in mind, right? I mean, we hear it all the time. This is a business, right?
Yeah.
It's a business. The 30, clubs that you're talking about, those are professional corporations, right? They have a balance sheet too. They're making an investment. They're looking for revenue. At the end of the day, to them, the individual doesn't, for lack of a better term, matter as much. Is that the reality of things?
Well, but flip it. Now the individual is creating their own brand and they're their own business.
Right.
Same with Instagram and this and that. So, I flipped the question to you. RJ and I are on the health side where we're trying to prevent injuries and make a career last longer. So we're going to go to a player and say, hey, invest in us during the season or off season so we could help maintain you, keep you healthier, and so forth. But from the financial side, how do you have a conversation with an athlete and say, look, I know you're a minor league. What's an average minor league get paid?
Yeah. 2,000 low level to like 4,000, 5,000 upper level.
Okay. So they're not making a ton of money, but at some point they need to invest in themselves. I mean, look, I know LeBron has all the money in the world, but he's spending $1 million a year on himself, so what do you recommend a player does to continue that?
Well, I would, it's again, it's the health side of things, it's the wealth side of things. I think they function the same way in terms of collaborating with different subject matter experts. Maybe you have an advisor consultant, right? In some cases, it could be the agent. Maybe it's, the financial advisor. Maybe it's the tax professional that should collaborate with other subject matter experts on your behalf. And really, it's all about building a team around you that has your best interest at heart, right? And I think that's, works for you guys from, again, preparation, be that, nutrition, conditioning, all that, right? It's the same thing on the wealth aspect of things, in terms of just be prepared to have a team around you. So, yeah, it makes sense. Yeah.
So, switching from that, baseball's a rotational sport. What are some injuries that you see or performance stuff that goes unnoticed that creeps in and affects them later on? I'm looking at the body totally different than you, so I'm going to be seeing it from a different point, but from performance, strength, conditioning wise, what do you see?
I mean, a lot of this comes down to, as we get more explosive, our swings, pitching, we're putting more stress on that rotation. And we've got all the time, specialization of sports, but also when everyone grew up, you climbed trees, played different sports. Even if you played one sport, we're becoming very one-dimensional athletes along with more explosive. So one big thing I see, more obliques, you'll see different hamstrings, you'll see shoulders, elbows, and everything. But if you think what makes us great, an athlete might be their asymmetries. They might be 2% asymmetrical. That's awesome. That's what makes them great. But if you're a right-handed thrower, right-handed hitter, you're always rotating the same way, that asymmetry is going to go there, which means now you're not only in your area of that 2% asymmetry where you're really good, but you're creating more problems. You're creating more stress on one side. So working on rotational stuff, opposing side. If we're doing a lot of flexion and extension, if we're rotating the right, rotating the left, but even working us very three-dimensionally, and functional training gets thrown around a lot, but it's more about three-dimensional training. That you look at all our muscles, they're not very linear muscle. We do a lot of performance training vertically and forward and backwards. but sports are a lateral rotational combination of all those planes. So we need to throw in the different angles under tension, slow movements, explosive movements, and kind of filter those and feather all those in to really work on and helping prevent or make us more resilient to the injuries.
Well, and to your point, I like to look at fascia throughout the body, and it's one big continuous piece. But looking at the rotational values, I could have an athlete who twisted if he's a righty and a pitcher, and he twisted his left ankle in high school, let's say, and it never really got treated the way it should, due to compensation and all that, and the way the fascia goes up the tract, he could have a right shoulder issue. But if no one's stepping outside the box and looking at things differently, they're going to be focused on the shoulder. And I think that's one of the things that I like about you so much, is thinking outside the box and being able to analyze different things, because there is compensation. And I know you and I have gone back a little. I think posture comes into play with the cell phone use. These guys travel all the time, and they sit in their hotel rooms just looking down on the phone, playing video games, texting, this, that. Shortening is a big aspect of things.
Well, to go on that fascia, this offseason I've had a lot of talk with hitting coaches, some pitching coaches. And a lot of these things, if we're looking at loading hitting wise, I'm a lefty, and we're telling everyone, hey, you need to load right here. Well, our fascia is really tight. We try to load our hands back here, we're trying to pull us into rotation. So not only is it important for the performance coaches and trainers, but the biomechanics, doctors, all the hitting coaches out there are learning about fascia and how the body works. Now, if I load here, I have a very loose fascia system, how the body's connected. I'm not going to feel tension. I got to load bigger. So with the rotational athletes, it's not one size fits all. It's how does our body function? Are we tightly wound? Are we loosely wound? Does that change over a season because of compensations, because of riding on the bus, on overuse of injuries? And a loose athlete becomes a tight athlete, and now that changes their hitting mechanics a little bit, their pitching mechanics, their load of their hands, their load when they're throwing.
Actually, you're talking about hitting, and everybody, again, I'm a casual fan, but, you talk about hitting slumps, et cetera, in terms of how much does that have to do with just psychology versus also, again, because you're in the season, you're playing, right, and all of a sudden you get into that slump. Could that come from like something you guys have described in terms of like maybe, again, recovery workouts, et cetera, or, how does that come about? How does that happen?
It can really come about from the mental side. It can come around the physical side, getting tight. The fascia. It could come from a player hiding a little tweak of a hamstring or a hip, but he doesn't want to tell the team because there's not the trust there. And that's where we go back, is if you have that trust, that athletes being forthcoming on the physical side, on the mental side, and that helped out. And even a lot of times we talk about slumps that, and this goes towards the high school, college guys. High school guy flips out because he goes, 1 for 12, we consider that a huge slump. That's 3 games in pro ball. That's nothing. That's not a slump. So it comes into the mindset of the slump. And sometimes people try to out hit or outwork things. And sometimes the best thing to do is step away and let yourself get a recharge and then back the next day.
But still, at the end of the day, isn't hitting a baseball the hardest thing you could do out of any sport? Even catching a football, diving, having the ball thrown right there, hitting a baseball is the hardest thing you can do. And these ball players, you got to remember, what is it? 3% of high school kids go to college to play the sport, and 0.5 or 1% of college go on a pro. So yeah, you're talking about the elite of the elite, but still, someone going 3 for 10, it has a great bet.
And the crazy thing is, I would say the stat is 1 more hit every 2 weeks for a major league season, and a professional hitter does from 250 to 300.
250, 300.
Yeah. This around there. And it's just, that, I don't know if it's one every 2 weeks, one every 1 week, but it's that tough and is really tough. And you got to give respect to these hitters because the pitchers are getting more filthy out there.
Yeah.
And people like the common fan watching TV doesn't realize how tough it is for these hitters. And you got to give a lot of respect to these hitting coaches out here because the good ones work with, they got 30 guys on the roster. They work with 30 in the division because they have different load points, different, and you're working the physical and the mental. And these hitters, work their ass off and really do a good job.
Great stuff, guys. I want to take a quick break for a segment that we call the Unfiltered Wacky Stats. So we'll be right back with that. All right, Eric, let's start with our Unfiltered Wacky Stats here. Take us, give me your first one there.
All right. So since we're at spring training and the Cubs, I have my Safe Ferris shirt on for the Cubbies fans out there. Let me ask you this. How many hot dogs do you think are sold throughout the entire MLB season?
Throughout 9-10 million, maybe?
Nope. You got to double that, buddy. 20 million hot dogs are consumed.
2 million total?
20 million. Which technically, if you were to line them up, you could line it up from L.A. to New York and back to L.A. again.
That's quite a distance. But hey, you know what? So let's stick with hot dogs here for a second. Obviously I'm a Yankees fan, so legendary, Babe Ruth was not just legendary for the 714 home runs he hit, but also for his appetite. How many hot dogs do you think he ate before a game?
Before a game, probably maybe 2, maybe 3.
According to reports, it seems like he ate up to 12 hot dogs before the game, and then, basically, swallowed it down with 8 sodas as well. So, how is that for a stat?
What did the nutritionist say about that?
I don't think they have nutritionists.
Yeah. All right. So what do you think people like more on their hot dogs? Ketchup or mustard?
Tough one. I would go with ketchup.
Nope. Mustard by far took the reign over ketchup.
Really? I did not expect that. Okay. Wonder how much, people put relish on it as well. So that would be an interesting stat to know. But let's continue with
onions and pickles and tomatoes.
Let's continue with the food. Obviously 7th inning stretch, right? Let's assume a fan eats, 2 hot dogs, has 1 beer, and a helmet of nachos up to the 7th inning stretch, right? How many calories do you think that's, amounts to approximately?
I don't know. 12 to 1,500.
Yeah, you're right there,
maybe?
buddy. It's like 15 to 2,000 calories, which is also equals the same amount as an MLB player burns during the game. So basically, as you're sitting there stuffing your face with 15 to 2,000 calories, the guys on the field are actually losing that amount of calories. So I thought that was interesting.
There you go.
Okay. Well, that's it for those wacky facts. We're going back to the podcast now. All right. Thank you. Well, we're going back into talk a little bit more about the pros in terms of maybe some examples that, again, our audience would know in regards to, pro players where you see oh, I can really tell this fella, he's really on top of this game, from a nutritional, from a, just preparation versus some others. Yeah. You might have seen, not to name any names, but that are not as well prepared and you could see the end result of it. So maybe you have a couple of good examples on a pro level there.
I mean, the 2 things I can think of, one go off that is briefly go into what a typical home and away day is, because I don't think people realize. They think, okay, 7 o'clock game, you get down at 4 o'clock and nice empty day, but a lot of times getting the ballpark at noon, after getting in on a bus at 3 in the morning. So it's better now than it was, but talk about how it used to be, but how things have improved. But what a typical day is, and that goes into the preparation and how the ability to be consistent, that 1% better being consistent. And then what you brought up a little bit, and we got off track of it, is when talking rotational athlete, is the overpredominance of worrying about how strong we are. I don't care how strong you are. Your weakest guys never your best. Strongest guys never your best. Is you have and be able to move in three-dimensional, and then you need that power through that. Yeah.
Yes. What about injuries? You know, I mean, you see, you know, especially with pitchers, you know, the Tommy John surgeries and all that stuff. There's more and more of those. Why is that? What is changing? Is it just in terms of people are going for power? You know, versus what is the reason if there is a particular?
Well, wait. Do you want to bring us back on the show?
What do you want to talk about? Let's do. We go over there to figure out if we're gonna have enough time. All this, yeah. Because I was gonna say the Tommy John is part of it is you're building up so much damage when you're younger because specialization of the throwing, because your tendon ligaments get less blood flow, so they heal slower. So you're building up more tears when you're younger. That's part of it. The second part of it is we're overemphasizing on spin rate, which now we've become a more upper body dominant throw instead of using our legs and core.
So for, as an example then, because, you know, Eric and I were just at a game yesterday, again, it's in the very beginning of spring training, right? You see a bunch of these young guys starting pitchers, you know, throwing the mid-90s, really hard. You know, what I'm hearing from you then in terms of like, you know, building, again, that scar tissue, et cetera, like this is at a young age. Again, this is spring training. You know, fast forward 7, 8 years. What impact does that have on these players?
They just never, they recover. They built the scar tissue. They built deformities in the UCL tendons, the joints, the muscle movement patterns, and they're so worried about throwing as far as they can that they create top-down sequences. They forget how to interact with the ground, use the ground. One thing, like I'll say here, if I say on the show, because it's going to call a couple people in the Nationals organization, is you have analytic people changing arm angles in season on without telling the pitching coach. So you change from here to here. That's a major stress on the shoulder elbow, or changing pitch grips from here to here is a major stress on the elbow. So you have people on the analytics side doing that to get better spin rate and better movement on the pitch, but there's no coordination with performance and they don't realize how stressful that is.
So tuning the car and just like getting the max out of the engine, but it's still obviously there's a way higher stress level.
So we're not tuning the car. We're trying to drive the car faster without tuning it, without fixing the alignment, without changing the tires.
So let's bring us back in to the show.
Oh, wow.
No, because he just said I can't do this on the show.
Go ahead.
I think that
he can't talk about the Nats on the show. Yeah. So bring us back in and then ask.
Well, the pros, that was a real question. This is going to mess up the video, by the way. You go ahead. You take it from here. I'll do your question.
No.
Oh, I thought that break we were on.
I thought we were all.
No, then I would have to stop it. Like, well.
No, he's going to fast forward through this. So I'm saying from the break, bring us back from the break.
Okay, so we're going to ask the same question again about pros?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Well, it's back right in terms of like the pros. You know, again, we're seeing a lot more, you know, injury, et cetera, major injuries. But just in regards to like, you know, from a preparation perspective, what do you see? We have a couple of examples for the audience in terms of guys that really prepare well versus guys, they're not as well prepared from the beginning of the season. And you could see kind of like during the season that they've never really gotten to where they were supposed to be when this season started.
A lot of it is really, you hit the term prepare and how you do before the season. Where spring training used to be a time to get ready, now spring training, you better go full go. So if you're not prepared, if you come into spring training and you don't have like a car, you don't have your alignment done, you don't have your old tires, you're not tuned up, you got to run the Daytona 500, you're going to struggle. And there's not time to catch up. So it's now that what you'll see as the season, especially as the season goes on, the guys that kind of dwindle down, get beat up. A lot of those guys are the guys that preseason and then into the season haven't done enough preparation. And the tough thing about preparation and especially in season, there's a lot of not being like brushing your teeth. You don't get excited about teeth twice a day for 2 minutes. But if you do that, you're probably not going to get cavities. It's boring. But if you brush your teeth an hour every 2 weeks, you're going to get cavities. So it's the idea of not doing a bunch of work one day. Just carve out 5-10 minutes every single day to get your work in. And that could be your physical work, your mobility work. It could be, I have a lot of players who study crypto and study about stock market, the financial, learn about your financial 5-10 minutes a day. Find something 5-10 minutes a day to make yourself better physically, mentally, and spiritually, anything along those lines. And that's what you're going to see is the guys that fade out mid-season are usually the guys that haven't done that.
Well, and it's also, look, the injuries we're seeing at the end of the season or long term, it's overuse. I mean, they're playing so many games. And so how do you keep the health of the body and prolong it as long as you can? And a lot of that is recovery. And to me, I think the difference between a pro athlete, you may know more on the minor league side, but from the big leagues to the minor, and then just take your travel ball high school kid and stuff. The big league guys, and I'm thinking the minor league guys, they have full-time training room. They're able to go in and get the boots and get stretched and get muscle work, get adjusted, get whatever they need. And that's going to help them go on, where a lot of the high school kids, they don't have access to that stuff. And I think that's leading to more of a wear and tear on the body that comes into play later on in the life. I had a minor league pitcher. He had 3 Tommy John surgeries and he hung up his dad. He's like, I just can't do anymore. Like, if this stuff doesn't get addressed at a younger age and they're not doing stuff, they're not going to perform.
Again, so it's really going back to what you said. You have to start, look, today's spring training. Here's where it starts, not just for this season, but the seasons to come.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, it's really, again, the step starts before you even get on the pitch out here. So
one of the shortages with athletes is the story that petty that doubles every day for 30 days. I'd say, when you take the penny that doubles every day for 30 days, or would you take $2 million? I mean, hey, I'll take $2 million. But penny that doubles every day for 30 days is, I think, 5.2 million. Is a compound interest. It's that small thing you do every single day. You're not going to notice it in week 1, week 2, week 3, but you're going to notice it as the season goes on. And you're going to notice that you start these mechanics and learning how to interact with the ground, how to use your body correctly when you're in middle school, high school, into college. Then all of a sudden, you're hitting, your pitching, your strength performance, your production, everything starts moving correctly. So you're not trying to race on a battle with ball tires.
Oh, that makes sense. So what were you saying? Because obviously guys of, different age, size, shape and all that stuff. What's strength versus skill versus recovery like? Is it bigger guy prone to injury or not necessarily? How does that play a role?
Not necessarily. The old adage was you can't pull fat, but that's obviously that's just a bad old school adage. But it's, for me, even though I'm a performance strength, power coach, it's the most important thing for me is recovery. If you're not recovered, you're not going to be doing anything else. And the second most important thing in season is skill work. And that's me coming from a performance strength coach. In the off season, your most important thing is probably going to be performance strength stuff. In season 2B is your strength, power, skill, your mobility work. Because that really, the best organization is more of a collaboration and everybody working together. The hitting, the pitching, the performance athletic training, the PT, the front office, the scout, everyone's kind of working analytics. They're all working together on one common goal. And that's where it is that our goal is not to be the strongest. I've never had the strongest athlete be the best. I've never had the weakest athlete be the best. All things equal, I'm a stronger athlete, but usually that comes with the price of ability or power. So we need to get the best 3-dimensional athlete who can work in all 3 planes of motion, under control, ability to decelerate. Then we start increasing the strength and power. But if we can't control that deceleration, If we can't control all ranges of motion, you're going to lose that race. If we're both Ferraris and I got brand new brakes and you got bad brakes, I'm going to beat you every single time because you're not going to accelerate because your brakes are bad.
How many old school trainers are there that are not looking at a three-dimensional mobility model and focused on strength?
I would say, like, when you look at, whether we're talking the strength coaches or athletic trainers, but especially more sort of strength coaches, is a lot of them in the industry now are more what we would consider new school.
Okay.
And I hate the term old and new school because you need both. Old school is just strong. New school is let's just look at analytics and data point numbers, and you need both. And
talk about both. I mean, how much about implementing DFR to hit doing that thing, fast and slow twitch and burst non-weights to make a joint live longer.
And that's where we're talking about, and this goes into performance, injury, DFR, blood flow restriction. So, all the research shows using DFR prioritizes fast, type 2 fast twitch muscle fibers. So we can potentially make someone more explosive in an easier way. Yep. But if we use it too much, we're not loading the tendons and ligaments, and then the muscles are getting a lot stronger than tendons and ligaments. So we have to look at when are we using BFR and when are we not using it.
So, BFR is blood flow restriction. So basically you're able to restrict the amount of blood down in the arm or the leg, trick the body, and help it build more muscle mass and recover faster.
I'm just wondering in terms of like in you guys' field, like, what kind of certifications is one supposed to look for and all that stuff? I mean, I'm sure there's a broad variety of folks in your guys' industry that, pretend to have that knowledge and, work with people. What is it? What do you see in that landscape?
So strength and conditioning, you have to have your CSCS, certified strength and conditioning specialist, as a minimum. If you work in double, triple A, big leagues, you have to have your RSCC, which is equivalent to 5 years of professional experience. You have to have that certification. And then beyond that, it's just your basic. And then it's up to the individual strength coach to, other than the 60 years you need every 3 years to do what you want. So there's some conferences guys will go to, some will, conference here or there, or course, some will go in depth. I know like the last 2 years combined, I did 1,200 hours continuing ed. I did a 40-week fellowship last year and 40 the year before, along with conference courses. And for me is you just keep learning. I'm doing a sports science course right now, and a couple other courses because, I don't need to be great at sports science. I need to understand it. I don't need to be great at mental skills. I need to understand to be able to help out and refer out. So I need to be really good and great at what I do, performance and strength wise. I need to understand the other fields so I can use them and then know when I can refer out help to those people.
I think it's the same thing. Again, talk about preparation. You collaborate with other subject matter experts like Eric. I would like to hear from you as well in terms of what are the certifications on your end?
I think it's political, to be honest. I mean, look, I have my doctorate degree. I have an undergrad degree in exercise and sports sciences or kinesiology. But within the chiropractic profession, there's another certification as a certified sports practitioner. Outside of the profession, no one knows what it is. I mean, so a lot of certifications are coming about where the general public doesn't necessarily know what they are. And I think it depends on the organization. If you're working with a pro team, you're going to stay in your lane. You always want to stay in your lane. You could offer feedback and help with other things, but do what your C is. So when I was brought in, they needed someone who could help adjust the athletes. I could do muscle work. I could do this. I could do that, but that was the main job. From a education standpoint, I would think with trainers and strength coaches, they're all kind of in the same world. So there's a better understanding of what everything does, I would assume. But it's just having an open mind, knowing, hey, I want to learn this. I'm going to get a certain it. Doesn't matter if someone knows or doesn't know. If you're more educated in a certain topic or technique, then that helps you become a better practitioner, trainer, strength coach, whatever it is.
And how do you guys like you get hired? Is it more like, is it coming through the organizations? It's like we've talked about baseball mostly, but in general, in all sports, is it you that, brings that in, or do you work with athletes in, or is it both?
So that's because we're different.
So we're getting hired. It's very organizational dependent. Organizations kind of hire references from people. If they have open, they take references. They promote from within. Some look more outside. Some are combinations. Some like to look at, like to hire, say, from Driveline. They want to hire coaches from there or different things. So every organization is a little different on philosophies, on hiring, on promoting. And they have different philosophies, sometimes minor leagues versus major leagues. A lot of major league teams will promote from within for major league jobs, and there's a lot that will hire from outside. So it's really organization dependent, and sometimes even general manager. It can change depending on who the new GM comes in and the changes.
I mean, again, we mostly talked about baseball now, but is there any particular sport over another where it's like, you definitely need more preparation, than in other sports? Is there like, one sport that comes to you guys, comes to mind? I know you work with entertainers as well, Eric, but, any particular sport that comes to mind is like, you really need to prepare a lot more in this sport versus the other? Or is it just different?
I would think baseball, physically, mentally, everything is the hardest sport to prepare because you're playing 142, 43 games of minors, 106 and 2 of the majors, plus spring training. You're going 6-7 days a week. Sometimes you're 1 day off a week. You're traveling in the minor leagues. It's a grind. But then you have football that, if you want sometimes the mental side of physical recovery side, you get beat up so bad in a game. The playbooks are very intense, the play call and the audibles and everything. So that's a very more of a mental grind and their recovery grind. So I think there's two different ones. Football, you get beat up like you just got in a fight with Mike Tyson.
The immediate impact.
Yes. And then baseball is just
baseball, basketball, hockey. Those are.
I was just going to ask.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Yeah. So, I think summer match. The other aspect is baseball's really the only sport with the minors. You come out of college, you're going straight to the NFL, right? Basketball, you got the G League, but average minor league contract, 7 years, right?
Yeah, most guys are in the minors for 4 or 5 years before they make the big leagues.
So you say it's more integrated of again, it's a development league before you get to the majors. It's more integrated because obviously the NHL got the AHL, right? So
yeah, they know that the reaction time, strength, speed comes over time also, and coming out of college, you're not as groomed, you correct me if I'm wrong, from a college athlete until you've been playing for 5 years in the minors. You're always going to have your one-offs who do go from college straight to the bigs, but
you're also playing baseball's the only sport that you from high school and college to professional and use different equipment. You go from a metal bat to a wood bat. That's a huge difference for hitters, for pitchers. There's no other sport. You're not playing college basketball with a basketball that is, 3/4 the size or something like that, or the court that's half the size.
I think you just brought up another good point in terms of we're talking about, again, the minor leagues, college, whatnot. especially in baseball with all the international players, how are they prepared? How is it, if you have like people, that play out of the Dominican Republic, right? Do they have the same level of preparation? Is it that, major league clubs, send their people over there, make sure from, again, conditioning, nutritional, etc. How is that? You guys have any?
I mean, you'll know more, but I have a player right now who's flying to Mexico in 2 weeks to be in their league.
He's playing in Mexico.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he was in he's been playing like 12 years, but he's older, so he came down a little. He said, I go to Mexico, we do 3 to 4 weeks spring training, and then our season starts right away. So it's not as long, obviously. So to your point originally, he had to be prepared, and that's what we've been doing with him this off season. But I don't know the DR.
So the DR with international age is 16.
Yeah.
So equivalent to like high school sophomore. But what ends up happening, especially with DR, you have Buscos, which are kind of quasi agents, but they will a lot of them have academies down there. So a lot of the younger Dominican athletes, they'll drop out of school at 12, 13 years old, go to these academies where they'll train them in the hopes that at 16 they get signed, player gets signed, he gets some money, his Buscon gets money, someone else might get money. So it's almost like down we go. It's more like a factory they let times out down there.
Okay.
So once you're signed at 16, each team has a Dominican academy where the players will live there for, 8, 9 months of the year. They'll do workouts, training camps. They got bedrooms there or dormitories. They got breakfast, lunch, dinner. Like with the Nationals, our guy that handled all that did a great job. He really worked on integrating and getting to learn English through Rosetta Stone. They do some financial education courses. So, and most DR academies for professional teams are getting that along those lines.
So, but another question in terms of like from a language barrier perspective, like, as they're coming into, again, they joined their major league clubs and stuff. If it's, again, you as a trainer, even from an in-game kind of coaching, is that an actual issue, in terms of the language barrier, not understanding, what's going on with some of these players, or is that not a challenge at all?
At the lower, as they move up, a lot of players work really hard to get better English. So basic communication is pretty good. Like if you really want to get super technical, a lot of times hitting coach, pitching coach, you can actually show the movement and they'll pick it up pretty well. And a lot of players know the English better, but it's a very nerve-wracking thing to like bait them. They don't want to make a mistake. I know when I got into the Dominican Republic, my Spanish is okay, but I feel embarrassed like if I don't make a mistake, sure. And so it's the same thing that they're coming over and they don't realize how tough it is. They're coming over. And I remember my first year was a short season, and the first game I'm life, my players from Dominican Republic have never traveled outside of Florida. They're up in upstate New York, never lived on their own, never had to order food on their own, never saw fireworks, never played under lights. And they're trying to learn English. There's a lot of stress for them. And there's the better clubs really help these guys out and kind of help them focus on baseball.
I mean, this is an aspect, again, just to your point, like, ordering food, etc. This is for us, that's an old national thing, right? But for those young, it could be, it can impact their performance on the field. And again, that might impact their, longevity in the game, etc. So it's probably something that should, needs to be considered, right? So.
All right. So, we're going to end the show with what we call the walk-off 10. Now, there are some rules to this, all right? So we're going to fire off 10 questions. It could be a true-false question or a one-word answer, but you can't go and say, well, maybe some of this and some of that. So
do my best.
I know that's going to be tough for you.
Just done this before.
All right. True or false? Most throwing injuries are workload related more than mechanics related.
False.
Okay. One word answer here. The most important quality for a pitcher is mobility, stability, or power.
I will go with stability first. Stability on one.
All right. I would do mobility, but that's all right. True or false? In-season strength training should be reduced to maintenance only.
False.
One word. The most overlooked area in baseball training.
Interacting with the ground. No, it's 3 words, but interacting with the ground.
All right, I'll give that to you. True or false? Sprint speed is more trainable than people think.
True.
One word. More important for hitters, bat speed or rotational power?
Although rotational power, directional rotational power.
All right. True or false? Long toss increases injury risk.
Totally false.
One word. The biggest recovery game changer: sleep, nutrition, or hydration?
Sleep.
Okay. True or false? Velocity gains are mostly neurological.
False.
Okay. One word. The best lower body lift for baseball athletes.
None. There's not one particular that's best for everybody.
All right. True or false? Core training should prioritize anti-rotation over rotation.
True.
Last one word. The most common mistake young players make in the weight room.
One word.
No, I know where you're going to go with this one, so I'll give it to you.
Prioritizing just getting bigger, stronger, more muscular, and prioritizing how much weight they lift as opposed to the quality of the movement.
Well, and off to their friends to keep up. So,
Yep.
All right, RJ, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Ronnie. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, that was another episode of Empire Sports Alliance Unfiltered, and we certainly shall be back with another interesting guest. Thank you, and please feel free to share the feedback, in your posts, etc. Was happy to hear it. Thank you.